politicians are actually supportive, and teachers feel really proud to be teachers. So we have delegations that come to the University of Toronto. The last 4 weeks we've had delegations from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and China. We're expecting 2 or 3 more delegations in January. They all come because they're asking the question, how did you get from one place to the other? We have in Ontario what I call a coherent and aligned system. The government has set a vision and high expectations, and they've rolled out the support to the schools with a lot of professional development that's all research-based. The teachers' unions have also been supportive. So now we have teachers' unions, teachers, the government, principals, everybody, same vision, same expectations, and a lot of support. And OISE, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at Toronto, has played a leading role. Almost all the advisors to the government have come from our institution. We provide the research for them. We train educators. Every year, I'm responsible for over 5,000 teachers who want to upgrade. Many of those teachers who want to become principals, and in Ontario, you must take 2 courses and do a practicum before you're eligible to be a principal. So it's 250 hours of coursework as well as a practicum. Here again is just a little bit of a context. 10 years ago, the graph on the left-hand side showed the elementary students' performance on our grade 3 and 6 reading and writing and math tests. Only slightly more than half our students were able to meet the expectations. Today, we're at about 74%. That's a long way to come in 10 years, from just over half to 3/4. You need to understand that in that population are every single student, including those with Down syndrome, those who have just arrived at our international airport and have been in a refugee camp and have had interrupted education. Everybody is included in that statistic. The graph on the right shows our high school graduation. We have approximately 84% of our high school graduates or students graduating, and again, that includes the entire population. 10 years ago, it was just over 60%. So these are dramatically improved statistics. I have a question for you. Do you believe that all students can achieve high standards given the right time and support? That's the right answer, but it may not be for all of you the honest answer, because it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. You see some students and you think they're never going to be successful. Now, success is different for different students. In Ontario, we believe, and I'd have to say 95 to 99% of the people in education, no matter what level, believe that students can achieve and that each teacher can achieve. Now, if you're a school principal, do you believe every teacher can achieve to high levels? Do you?
To a certain extent.
Because I've been there, okay? I've walked in when the principal leaving says, that teacher over there, good luck, okay? They're going to be the person that's going to keep you up at night. Okay? Let me tell you, we believe in Ontario what you see on this slide, and it has made a huge difference. Alberta is a province in Western Canada, and they've been doing some work with Norway. Norway is a country that's very much in the middle of the pack in PISA scores, the Performance of International Student Assessment. They're in the middle. They don't want to be in the middle. They're a very wealthy country, very, very wealthy country, and they should be doing better. What I find interesting is the bar across that says students learn best by finding solutions on their own in mathematics. On everything else, the Norwegian and the Canadian teachers are about the same. But when it talks about beliefs, about students, look at the difference. In Canada, 82% of our teachers believe students can learn best by finding their own solution, as opposed to just 52% basically in Norway. It's a staggering statistic. We have sent people from the University of Toronto to Norway to do some work, and what they find is there's a dramatic difference, not only in beliefs but in pedagogy, but certainly in beliefs. I want you to, and I'm only going to give you 30 seconds, The first 15, I want you to think about a leader that you really respect, the leader that stands out in your mind, and think about 1 or 2 characteristics that make that leader so respected by you. And then I want you to turn to the person beside you or behind you and share who the person is and why you respect them. You have 30 seconds. Okay, we're on a very, very tight timeline, so I'm going to cut you off. Would some pair like to share what they talked about who they respected and why?
The leader I thought of was...
Yeah, you'll have to speak up. I don't know where the microphone went. Oops.
The leader I thought of is King Hussein, God bless his soul. I thought of him simply because I thought he was a visionary man. He knew where to go to. He had excellent interpersonal relationship and very modest. So he really impacted the people he worked with or the people who dealt with him.
Great. A volunteer at the back. Want me to take this one off, the other one?
No, it's good.
I thought that my father was
Just for the camera.
the greatest leader in my life. Because he was compassionate. He's deaf, by the way, and he was insisted that everybody of us has learning. He was compassionate. He was determined. He knows what he wants from everybody, and he was honest with everybody.
Fantastic. One last one, and then we move on.
Hi, everybody. When you lead someone, you lead them by example or by modeling, as my colleague says. I am a principal here in Amman, so I begin with myself. When I commit them to do and whatever the work needs, I begin with myself. I apply the rules on me first.
Okay, thank you. If you Google leadership, you will get thousands of sites. If you Google, you can have experts who will tell you whatever. I'm going to tell you that from my many, many years in education, and based on the philosophy of Ontario leadership for school principals, we believe in what we call servant leadership. The principal does not sit in the office, put their feet up on the desk, be the boss. Okay? Schools where that happens are doomed to failure. Doomed. If that's the kind of principal you are, I want to challenge you today to think about serving your teachers and your students and your community. And if you're willing to do that, you can turn the world upside down. If you're not willing to do that, you can have an average school if you have good teachers. The research says that principals can make at least 25% of a difference in the achievement of students. That's a big chunk. The teachers still make more, but principals who are instructional leaders and who serve their schools can make that kind of a difference. Ken Leithwood is a noisy professor who has, for over 30 years, done research. And I've worked on some of his research projects. He's an amazing leader. And this is where the statistics are coming from. PISA. Okay, I think you all know about PISA. If you have nothing to do one night and you want to be inspired, and you haven't heard him before, go to TED Talks. If I had a whole day today, I would have played part of it for you. Andreas Schleicher, who's the head of OECD, talks about what we have learned from PISA. It is amazing. What do the top performing countries do that the average and low performing countries don't do? And he highlights them all. And there is a consistent pattern. Problem solving and application is the first thing that the highly successful countries do. And I would say to you as school principals, it's not only the curriculum, but it's the staff and it's yourself. What is your problem-solving model? When you have a difficult teacher, a difficult parent, a challenging student, a challenging boss, a situation where there's violence in the school, a situation where students are, what is your problem-solving model? Do you have a framework to work through? We can't go through that today, but you should have some way of attacking these issues and challenges that you have. Equity, high standards, and raising low performance. In the past, we worried a lot about getting everybody to university in Canada. So what did that mean? That meant you worry about the the good kids. The kids at the bottom, they're not going to learn anyway because we don't think they can be successful. So they'll go and they'll put gasoline in a car, they'll load boxes in some factory. That's what they'll do. What we have found in the high-performing countries, and Canada in particular, is that if the kids are here and we want them all to move up, the range between the highest and the lowest performing in Canada and all the other countries at the top is very narrow. In countries at the bottom of PISA scores, it's like this. There's a huge difference between the top and the bottom. So what we have done in Canada is we have focused on moving the bottom up. So people might say, oh, you're going to move the bottom up, but the top, nothing's going to happen. We have found exactly the opposite. As you move the bottom up through good teaching, the top students also go up. You need to value teachers. So the question I'd have for you, again, if I had you for 3 days, is how do you value your teachers? To be honest, money counts. How you spend your money counts. So if you go to Finland, they pay their teachers a lot of money. You go to the next country, Sweden, they do not pay their teachers very much. Where is Sweden on the PISA scores? In the middle of the pack. Now, there are other factors involved. If you ask the Swedish educator, are you valued in society? Do people want their children to become teachers? The answer would be no. In Finland, the #1 profession is to be a teacher. It's more valued than being a doctor. That's how education is valued. So the question and the challenge for you as principals, you can't pay them more money. I don't know. You can't. But how do you value them? There are ways to value, and that's where you problem solve. Now I could give you some suggestions. One of the things, and I want to say this now in case I don't say it later, many of you are dealing with schools that have 50 to 60, maybe even more students in one class. Like, how do you deal with that? Because I've gone to a couple of sessions here, and those of us from the OECD countries, we have classes of 20 to 30, maybe 35. Teachers grumble at 30, 30 in a class. And you've got like twice the number. So how can you do some of the things that we're talking about here? You can. It's not easy. But there are things you can do as a principal. So when I was a principal, I would say, I'm going to come in to your class today, and I'm going to spend the morning teaching, because I can teach. I'm a teacher. And I'm going to give you time to go and visit another teacher. Or I want you to go and help another new teacher who's struggling. Coach that other teacher. And I'm going to be the supply teacher. I did that when I was a superintendent. We have in Canada teachers, principals, superintendents, the director. So I was a senior superintendent. I would go into a school and say to one of my principals, give me your hardest class today. I'm going to teach them. Now I have to say, the last time I did that, before I was promoted and retired, it was a hard class. They were all special education students, all boys, all with behavior issues. Oh my goodness, it was a very long day. But it was good for me to know what my teachers had to deal with. So how do you value your teachers? I took the risk of looking stupid and making mistakes. So I ask you, are you willing to be a co-learner? And I know I'm sort of digressing here, but in Ontario, we have realized that principals need to be co-learners with their teachers. Do class sizes make a difference? Yes and no. They do, but they don't. If you're talking 20 to 30, no difference. If you're talking even 30 to 40, not so much. What most of you are probably dealing with, yes, it does make a difference. In Ontario, parents are complaining if their grade 1 class is 23 and not 22. It doesn't make a difference.
But sometimes it's not always true. The number doesn't really affect if the mentality of the students is ready to learn. In the same country where I work, schools with 50 students in class, but with a good mentality that you don't notice that they're really 50. And in my school, I have 15 students in the class, and the teacher is struggling.
Okay, so let me give you an example. If this was my class here, and I stood up here all day, click, 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 turn the textbook, read, 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 this is your homework, go do. Yeah. Okay, non-engaged, and if you're good, compliant, you don't give me a hard time, you do what I ask you to do, bored out of your mind. We read something recently, it just came out, Elizabeth, my colleague, read, that over 90% of American students say they're bored in school. That's a terrible statistic. Terrible. So we need to engage students. Now in Ontario, we have a whole structure for doing that. Even the way we plan our lessons is to engage. That's why I told you a story at the beginning, to try to get you interested. If I had a class where every seat was filled here, I could do blah, 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 and then I could say, okay, this group, this group, this group, this group, this group, you all have a different task. Go and work together, you're going to report back. There are many ways I can get you into smaller groups, thinking with and sharing with pairs and small groups, cooperative learning. So there are ways, even with large classes, that you can in fact demonstrate good pedagogy. John Hattie, who is a New Zealand educator, Dr. Hattie, got his PhD actually from the University of Toronto, did a meta-analysis of millions of pieces of research. He must have had a lot of doctoral students. And what he found was almost everything improves student achievement. Almost everything. The problem is some things improve student achievement this much, whereas other things improve it that much. Only 3 things had a negative impact on student achievement. And really, retention was the most powerful. In your school, if they don't pass the exams, do they fail? Do you hold them back? If you hold them back, you're dooming them to failure again. Because what are they going to experience? More of the same. They weren't successful because it wasn't good enough the first time, so you're going to say, you know what? We're just going to give you more of the same. Now, if you're sick and you have a medicine and the medicine doesn't work, what does your doctor say? They try something different. Okay? They don't just keep giving you more of the same. But that's what we do to these students. And their self-esteem goes through the floor. Things like class size do make a difference. Homework. In elementary schools, it hardly makes any difference. Hardly. High school, yes. One of the things that we're trying in North America are flipped classrooms, where kids actually learn the content on their own at home. That's their homework. And then they come into school for the extension, the consolidation, the questioning. Now, my daughters have experienced that. They're experiencing that in university. My one daughter would say they don't like it because it's hard work. It's hard work. This is what makes a difference. So you can Google and get lots of this online if you just put Visible Learning John Hattie. Number one, and if you were in my session yesterday, I'm sorry, and a couple of you were, you're hearing this again, but I think it bears repeating. Student self-reported grades. If I were to say to you, if you were all students, how are you going to do this year? Some students would say, I'm going to do really well. Others would say, it's going to be hard, I'm not going to do well. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. How you say you're going to do is how you're going to do. It's like the first question. What do you believe about students and what do they believe about themselves? Let me just talk about number 3, because I can't talk about all of them. Providing formative evaluation. We have learned in Canada, and this is where principals have a key role, that it's very important to get good information on student achievement. You have to dig down into the data. So if you have a class that's not doing well in reading, why are they not reading? What aspect of reading are they struggling with? Now, I'm not an elementary literacy expert, but are we talking about phonemic awareness? Are we talking miscue analysis that needs to be done? We do a lot of running records. We do a lot of data collection. And then what happens is we have professional learning communities led by the principals. Not by the teachers, but by the principals, who are the lead teacher, the co-learner. Because the principal would come to this group of teachers and say, these are the issues we have. This is how our kids are doing. These are the areas of weakness. What are we going to do? So typically we say, what does the research say? Let's try something. Let's bring in some experts. Let's try this strategy. And then they monitor the results to see if it actually makes a difference. Now, think about this. In a high school, if you're a high school person and you're a history teacher, I taught history. I took biology, but I never took chemistry or physics in university. If I walk into a grade 12 physics class, what do I know about physics? Nothing. Honestly, nothing. How can I be a leader to the physics teacher? I can. And this is where I can be the leader. I know what generic good teaching looks like. I can walk up and down and I can talk to students and say to them things like, why are you learning this? Is this important? Do you know how to be successful in this class? I can ask them all kinds of questions. I can look at evidence of their student work. I can look at what's been graded. So I can then say to the physics teacher, it's all formulas to me, but I can tell you that half the students in the back were sleeping. Okay, they weren't engaged. So there's generic pieces that every principal needs to have. And I would argue you also need to have subject expertise. And an analogy I use is a football team, a soccer team.
Excuse me. We don't need to be knowledgeable about all subjects,
no.
Specifics of all subjects, because as a principal, you are an instructional leader. I mean, you are leading the learning process. I can attend any classroom and I can judge the learning. Is it taking place or not? Through the students' motivation, interaction, whatever, okay? So, I mean, I'm not a teacher leader.
Okay, I'm going to argue with you a little bit, but I'm going to agree with you a little bit. I think, yes, you need to know what good teaching looks like, but I believe, and in Ontario we believe, that principals are also learners and teachers. We don't go in necessarily and teach the class, that's why we hire teachers, but we work in professional learning communities. And if you were to walk into any Ontario school, the principal is part of a learning team that does what I explained. Every single principal, every single vice principal. And I shared yesterday, we had a group of important visitors coming to one of our schools. And the principal said, I'm very sorry, but I have my learning community. We have important things to talk about. You have, this much time, and then I have to go. And then 20 minutes later, his vice principal said, we have our learning communities. This is the important work of the school. Yes, we make announcements, we plan assemblies, we make sure children are safe, we do the budget, we schedule a timetable of school, we hire teachers. That, to me, is like making sure the boat doesn't have any holes in the bottom, the sail is there, the boat is ready to go someplace. But it's not going anywhere. It goes somewhere when you become the instructional leader, and you set the target, and you help the people. The example I use is, a school is like a football team or a soccer team. The teachers are like the players. The principal is like the coach. Now, if I think of an elite team, like if you're a football fan and you follow, I don't know, Manchester United or Barcelona, the coaches are sometimes old, very old, overweight, out of shape. Could they go out and play? No, absolutely not. But
They have a vision.
They know the game. And they'll say to the players, you are in the wrong position, or you're not really trying, or whatever. They have a strategy. They're the experts. In practice, they tell them what to do, because you know what? In the last game, we didn't do so well on defense. Okay? The goalie was having trouble with this aspect. They analyze, they coach. And what does a coach do when the game comes? Do they go into the training room or the locker room, have a cigarette, have a coffee, watch TV? No. They're on the field, watching the team, giving feedback, encouraging them, screaming at them. You're the coach. Are you in your office? Are you in the school? And I'll tell you, you have to fight to get in the school. It is not easy, because you've got somebody saying, fill out these forms, do this work. And for some people in Canada, maybe not here, we have them sometimes as students. I want to be a boss. I want to be a principal. I want to make more money. I don't really want to teach. It's too hard. And what we say to them is, find another career. So when I was supervising principals, I only wanted principals in my school who were going to be instructional leaders. Because otherwise, I knew my kids, I wouldn't want to put my kid into that school. You ask yourself the question, would you want your students, your children, to be a student in your school? Okay. One school board, and the superintendent who used to work there does work with OISE, she has her doctorate from OISE. This is the kind of difference you can make in your school. In 2004, only 44% of the grade 3 students were meeting the reading standard. By the time they got to grade 6 in 2007, that same group of students was now achieving the standard at 90%. What typically happens in school, especially around reading, if by grade 3 you're behind, you never catch up. That is the pattern. They broke the pattern in a dramatic way. So now the question is, how in the world did they do that? Some of what I've just shared is what they did. A small number of ambitious goals. You cannot do it all. We say in Ontario, 2 to 3 things, that's it. If you try to do more, you're not going to be successful. What is the most important thing for you to do? Leadership at all levels. Your teachers are leaders. Your kids are leaders. You are the super leader. High standards and expectations. I started early because I come from a place, and I know it's hard with security, but you know what? Class starts at 9. We start at 9. We don't punish the people who arrived on time, but the people who arrived late. Now, sometimes there are real reasons. I'm not punishing, that's the way it is. We use data. We are always looking at what do we know about our students. So sometimes it's even things like looking at how many kids are skipping in high school. How many kids are coming late? Why are they coming late? Why are they skipping? Is there a pattern of what classes they're skipping? What does that say about the teachers? So what I'm saying is a principal looks at the data. It analyzes the school. It's not just I think this. No. We need to have some evidence. The last point, because I can't go through all of them, it is hard work being a principal. It is, being a teacher is hard. I would say to you, being a principal is harder. If you do this well, it is tough work. It is. You can see great results, but it is not easy. 1 and then 2.
For number 1, is it ideal to have the staff come up with the goals?
Okay. The question is it ideal for the staff to come up with the goals, the 2 or 3 goals? Let me tell you how we do it in Ontario. It is a team that does it. Principal, vice principals, department heads or chairs in a large school, and teachers. And sometimes parents are involved, and sometimes students are involved, and sometimes superintendents are involved. Typically, the actual first draft is done by the whole staff with the principal. So it's not the principal saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. Never. It's always a collaborative effort. And even setting the vision for the school is broad. It's always with the community at large. Yep. What happened to my microphone? Anyway.
When I read this, you remind me with the book. It is Learning by Doing, a handbook for professional learning community at work by Richard Dufour and Rebecca Dufour.
Yes.
This is an excellent resource that I think, I'm not advertising, but I was in a team who decided in the school to transform to a professional learning community. For this reason, to achieve this goal, we decided to read at first. We decided to read, and we come up with the different resources, and we find this, and we translate it to Arabic.
Okay, I'm really glad you mentioned that. The Dufour work is instrumental in much of what we've done.
No, I just want to know where can we get a hold of a copy?
Amazon, probably.
No, it's from Educational Book House. I speak in Arabic, please?
Yes.
There is a book by Cotton about principals and students' achievement. What the research says. ما تقوله الأبحاث. هو مترجم أيضا. Cotton, I don't know if you hear about it. Cotton, she wrote about the principals and students' achievement.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm running out of time. I'm running up here. Okay.
1 hour.
Only 1 hour. Yeah. The person who did this work and got those results she's published many books, including with Michael Fullan, who's an OISE grad who is very famous. And Michael has written a lot of books. Dr. Lynn Sharratt has also written many books, including some with Michael Fullan. And she's the superintendent who got those results. She has a book called Putting Faces on the Data. And it
are translating it now.
Yes, and it's being translated now into Arabic and should be in January available. Yes. So Lynn Sharratt, Sharratt, Putting Faces on the Data. And Amazon will have it. Okay, in your handout, in the middle, is the Ontario Leadership Framework for Principals. This is completely based on the research of Dr. Ken Leithwood and the faculty at OISE over many, many years. And it has been adopted. Now, I know there are frameworks from places like Columbia and different countries, different universities. And I'm not going to say ours is better. I'm just saying ours has got it's got over 30 years of research. And it has become the driver for principals. If I'm going to be promoted from being a teacher to being a principal and I go for my interview, the questions are going to be based on what you see there. If I want to be promoted from a vice principal to a principal, that's what I'm going to be asked. When my superintendent comes to evaluate me, they're going to evaluate me on that. And how are they going to evaluate me? They're going to say, Evelyn, what did you do this year? What is the evidence that you're any of those things? So how did you build the collaborative community in your school? What's the evidence? Oh, we meet 5 times a year. No. Meeting is no evidence. What did you do? What were the outcomes? How can I measure? How did you measure how effective you were? So they would go through all these variables. I want you to take, again, 30 seconds. Look at that chart, pick one of the columns, maybe a column that you feel strong, that you have strength in. And say to yourself, how would I rank myself? Am I a beginner at this? Am I pretty good, or am I really an expert? And what evidence would I see if I came to your school? So just give yourself a few minutes to look at that. If we had a day or a 3-day institute on principal leadership, which we don't, we would work with this. We would go deep into this. What we're doing today is we are skimming the top of the water. Okay, it's like I'm floating on the Dead Sea and almost everything is above water, okay? We need to go deep on this, okay? This is where you do workshops. So in an hour, I can only give you a little sample. The buffet is out there and you're having little bits of everything, but you're not having a lot of any one thing, okay? So this is what we've done. I want you to be brave now and turn to somebody and say around one of the things, just share some evidence of something you've done along anything that's on that page, and then hopefully they'll share back with you. Okay? So again, I'm going to give you about 1 minute. That's all, 1 minute. Share about one thing that you think you do well and give the evidence for why you do it well. Could I just suggest to you, if you have a principal friend in the next school, you need to have a professional friend, a professional co-learner with you. And I would encourage you very strongly to find someone that you know and trust and to go on a journey of going through this. And to have a growth plan for yourself. Every principal in Ontario must have a personal professional development plan for every year. And it's skill-based, knowledge-based, attitudinal-based. So what knowledge? What do you want to know more about? What skills? What do you want to be able to do better? One of the things that we're doing at OISE is running a course called Teaching Learning Walks, and it's based on Richard Elmore's work out of Harvard and Robert Marzano's work, where principals go into classes and into schools and they look for the evidence of learning. So we're training principals to do that. It's a 25-hour course. Most of it's in class, some of it's online, and there's a practicum and they get feedback on their own schools. It's an amazing course. Why are we doing that? Because there are skills around how to observe. Because we have a researcher at the University of Toronto in our faculty who has done research that shows if principals just walk around schools, and you know, some principals, that's good. It's better than just sitting in the office, you would think. It's better, at least you're out. The research says it can actually be counterproductive. It can actually hurt. Why? Because teachers say, what are they watching me? Is he spying on me? You know, why are they here? For kids, it's a good thing. But teachers, you know, teaching is a very private matter, right? I close the door. We used to have teachers with doors and there was a window. They'd take paper, they'd hide, so that when people walk by, I didn't know what was happening in there. Could have been some very bad things. Now we've said, you know what? The doors should be open, not just literally, but metaphorically. And when principals go into classes, if they're just going in and just visiting, they're wasting their time. You may as well stay back in with the coffee in the office. It has to have an intention, it has to have a purpose. Or the paperwork is going to keep building up and you're going to get stressed out. So when you're in a class or when you're in the school, what's your purpose? I have a friend who worked at a private school in Hong Kong. His purpose every morning was to greet every child when they were dropped off with a Mercedes or Rolls Royce. And he knew the name of every one of his 800 students by the end of the first month. His purpose for standing out there was to get to know the names of every student and to build a relationship, not usually with the parents because they were drivers, they were chauffeurs, but you know, when he walked through the hall and he could say the name of every student within the first couple of weeks, what does that say? It says, you're important. You're just not a body, somebody paying tuition. You are someone that matters. So what I'm suggesting to you is find a friend, get a professional development plan about what you need to know or skills you need to improve, or maybe you say, you know what, I didn't believe everything Evelyn said. And you know, that's good. Push back, we say. Push back. Challenge me. It's good. We need to challenge each other. We don't have all the answers. Canada does not have all the answers. We're on a journey. We're sharing where we've been and where we are. To be a good principal is to be an effective problem solver. This is Peter Drucker's work. Great stuff. He's passed away, but great work. If you want to talk about just leadership in a generic way, I would recommend Peter Drucker's work to you. I think it's awesome. Back. At the bottom of the chart, and I am running out of time, you'll see boxes that run across the bottom of that chart in the middle pages of your handout. And I wanted, and they're dealing with emotions. We're not going to do this now, but one of the things is you have to learn to read body language. One of my schools, we called them the men in black in a high school. They didn't like the principal, they didn't like the vice principals, they didn't like the school board, they didn't like anybody. I don't think they liked students. And every lunchtime, they always wore black suits. They'd sit at the same table in the staff room and they'd play cards, they'd complain. Principal came in, a new vice principal, and the vice principal said, I'm going to attack those men in black. Okay? I'm going to get to those men in black. They weren't really the men in black, that's what the principal called them. So, first day, she goes up and says, hello, I'm Diane, I'm the new vice principal, so good to meet you. And she sat down and said, what are your names? The next day, she's making the rounds. She purposefully goes to the thing where nobody goes, and she said, oh, have you tried this? I made some cookies today. She offers them some cookies. Okay, not every day, but on a regular basis, she kept going, staying a little longer, and then eventually saying, I want to come into your class. You sound like you're doing a great job. Not really, but what was she doing? She was building relationships, okay? That is part of what's along the bottom of your chart. You need to be optimistic. You need to be proactive. If you know you're getting an issue coming to you this year or next year, what are you doing to prepare for it? We had a teacher shortage. We don't now in Ontario, but we used to. How do we attract teachers when we don't have enough teachers? So what our school board did was they went to the faculties of education and they said, We want to pay your teachers to come while they're still learning and help our teachers in the classroom. And what would happen is, if you came to my school as a student, a university student, and I paid you to come for maybe half a day a week, and you got to say, boy, that's a great school, that's a great school board, I want to work in that school board, not the one down the road. So what you were doing, we were proactively, we saw the problem and we tried to think, what can we do to solve this problem? So what's the problem you're going to be facing? You know, and how are you going to attack it? Resilience is in a circle by itself. Again, if you have time, I would say go to TED Talks and Google Angela Duckworth. Angela was a very successful person in the corporate world, but she went to teach grade 7 math. And what she found out was she was interested in this notion of resiliency, being like a rubber band. If you stretch me, I'll come back to where I was. I can come back. You knock me down, I rise up again. You can't keep me down. You know, you men in black, you're not going to beat me. Okay? There are teachers whose faces you see and you go, oh. Or there are parents that you see and go, oh, I have to face that parent. Okay? We've had them. Okay? We've all had them. If you're resilient, you put on your smile. You go into theater mode. You do what you need to do and you have a strategy. What she found for grade 7 students is that resiliency made as much of a difference as IQ in terms of math performance. Think about that. That's huge, huge. Because when we think of math, we think you've either got it or you don't, right? I used this example yesterday. Kids in Asia work very, very hard and do well in math. Kids in North America think math is very, very hard and they give up. That's the difference. Kids, they also have teachers who I think don't know how to teach math very well. That's another problem. But we're working on it. So I would say to you, you need to be resilient. Either the battery died or I just turned it off. Oh, I did. Okay. Sorry, can you get me back to where I was? Okay, we're going to wrap up. There's a lot more I would say. On the back here is a case study called Happy Valley. Let me just talk to you about Happy Valley. This, I think, is pretty typical of a lot of schools. You just get transferred or promoted into a school, and the person behind you has left the office basically with nothing. No records of student achievement, no records of staff meetings. There's a little card that says, good luck.
Happened in our school.
Yeah, it happens.
This is my school.
It happened to me. I walked into an empty office. Empty.
Not a single file.
Not a single file. I've been there.
It's absolutely our
Yes.
school.
Okay. So now you're sitting there and you can read that at home, and if you have a trusted friend or over a coffee, what are you going to do first? What are you going to do second? What are you going to do third? You can't do everything. Why are you going to do that first thing? Now, I could say to you, oh, you have to do this one thing first. I'm not sure there's really one thing that's the magic answer, but let me give you some suggestions, or let me hear from you. I think I've run out of time. I've run out of time. It's something for you to think about. What I would suggest to you, let me make sure I don't do this again. Can you just flip it to the next one, Elizabeth? And the next one. Yeah. What I would suggest to you is that unless you have a vision that's co-owned, everybody buys into it, with high expectations and a limited number of expectations, nothing is going to happen. They will beat you down and you'll be walking out writing good luck to the next person. Okay? You need to build your team. And you've got some, in this case study, there are a couple of teachers that are strong. You need to work with the strong teachers. See if I can hopefully not do this again. Okay, in Ontario we spend a lot of time helping principals to have what we call courageous conversations, brave conversations. They're not easy. I was a superintendent. I had a principal who was well loved, but she was an alcoholic, coming to school drunk, late. Not acceptable. I had to have a courageous conversation with her. Her husband was a principal in the next school. You can imagine how that is for me. I'm new to the board. I'm the stranger coming in. She's been drinking for years, and I'm going to deal with it? Yes, I am. Because I wouldn't want my child in that school. Okay, courageous conversations. How do you have them? Another workshop for another day. We've already talked about, should all principals be expert teachers?
Expert in teaching, not in the subject.
Yes, not in the subject. And the next one, what we've learned at OISE, we've gone over a lot of this. I'll just let you, those of you that are taking screenshots here. I think the second one, that next to the classroom teacher, you can make the most difference, and on to the next one. This is hard work, and it's about learning. If you're a principal, you must be a learner. You have to be intentional, you have to be brave, you have to be the inspiration for your school. When you walk into a staff meeting, you've got to be full of energy, and you need to inspire your staff. Be relentless, find that professional friend, and you have to be confident. You can make a difference. Okay, flip her one more time. If you want something new, you have to stop doing something old. You can't keep doing the same old, or nothing's going to change. So what are you going to do that's different? That's a question only you can answer. And the best way to predict your future is to create it. That's sort of the inspirational piece. And the last slide is OISE. The online resources, all these PowerPoints are available there. Okay? I would have brought them, but we've been to Doha for a couple of days. We've been here for a couple of days. We've been bringing packages to government officials. We have so many packages, we couldn't bring any more. I'm happy to take your personal questions. You've been a fantastic group. I only wish we could have had more dialogue, okay? But I know the time is short and it's time to move on. So thank you so much.